All right, here we go with day 2. We're going to be solving multi-step inequalities. For these first ones, we're going to show our steps and then we're going to graph the inequality. So you should have your packets open to day 2. You're going to want to follow along with me and do these problems just as if I was in the classroom taking these notes with you. So our first one, we're going to look at 4x plus 6 is greater than or equal to 54. We treat this just like we would an equation. So just like we were talking about on Friday, all we're going to do is do the steps that we would do to get x by itself. That's what we're trying to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 6 and subtract 6. In order to do that, those things go away and I'm left with 4x is greater than or equal to 48. Then to get x by itself, I then have to divide by 4. Divide by 4. I'm not dividing by a negative number, so I am going to keep my inequality going the same way, and I'm going to end with x is greater than or equal to 12. So that's my answer for this one. My second job here was to graph this inequality. So to graph an inequality, I'm just going to move over here. I'm going to draw my number line. I make sure to include the number 12, and I'm going to just like put one number on each side. Easy peasy. It's a greater than or equal to, so I'm going to circle this in, and it needs to be greater than, so my arrow is going to go this way. Okay, now we're going to move over to the next one. Again, we've seen all of these things with equations, so it's really nothing new, but you have to take this negative 1/3 and we have to distribute it inside those parentheses. Okay, so we're going to go negative 1/3 x. Then we're going to have to do negative 1/3 times 21. So negative 1/3 times 21. If we don't know how to do that in our head, what it would end up being actually is 21 divided by negative 3. And that is going to give us negative 7. And we keep our inequality on the other side the same. We haven't done anything over there yet. Then we're going to treat this just like we would an equation where we're going to add 7 and add 7. So we are left with negative 1/3 x is less than 19. Okay, so then we need to get this x by itself. So we need to get x by itself. So what I want to do is get rid of this multiplying by negative 1/3. In the end, what you want to do is divide by negative 1/3 and divide by negative 1/3. The trick here is we don't technically ever divide by fractions. So what you're going to end up doing is multiplying by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/3 is going to be 3. So it's going to end up being 19 times negative 3. But something's happening here. If this is a negative, that means we have to flip our inequality sign. So once I do 19 times negative 3, I flip my inequality. That answer is x is greater than or equal to negative 57. Because we started dealing with a negative number, that inequality then flipped. So don't forget that piece from the other day that we still do those things here. So now if I'm going to graph this, I'm going to make a line. I always include the number I'm trying to graph, and then I'm going to go 1 up. It's going to be negative 56. Negative 58, and then I got the x is greater than, and it's not going to include negative 57, so if it's greater than, it's going to be moving that way because we are in the negative numbers here. So greater than is going to head closer to 0. Okay, so just remember that if we divide or multiply by a negative number, we switch that inequality sign. All right, then we got 3 more. We're going to come over here and we're going to end up adding 2, adding 2. Negative 5w is greater than or equal to 25. Okay, then here we have a negative 5 times w. So now I have to divide by negative 5 and divide by negative 5. When I am dividing by a negative, that should signal me to flip this. So I'm going to flip my inequality sign again. These go away. W is, so what, 25 divided by negative 5? It's going to be a negative 5 here. Okay, so that is my answer. Again, I had to make sure I flipped that, and now I need to graph it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to include a negative 5, a negative 4, and a negative 6. Okay, so my W must be less than or equal to -5. So I'm going to color that in. And less than would go this way. And there we go. Okay, up over here, again, we've got a distributive. So we are going to have to distribute this inside of here. So we're going to distribute my 2 to my 4x. We're going to go 8x. And then the 2 is going to go over there to the 1. So it's going to be 8x plus 2. And then we keep this side the same. Okay, we keep that side the same because, sorry, we keep that side the same because we didn't do anything to it. Goodness sakes. Okay, so now I'm going to move this over and this over. So -2 is going to get rid of this +3. So I'm trying to combine my like terms because I have variables on both sides now. I have variables and I have constants on both sides. So I'm going to try to get rid of this 2 first. So I'm going to end up subtracting 2. That's going to get me 8x plus 1 is greater than 8x. Now, I have to move my 8x's so they can be together. But when I move this over here, I have to subtract 8x and subtract 8x. Something interesting is going to happen here. This is going to go away. I'm going to be left with 1 is greater than or equal to 0. Because 8x minus 8x is going to be 0. So my question for you is this true? Is 1 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it always is. So that means that the answer to this is all solutions. When you end up with no variables and the statement is true, the statement is true all the time, that 1 is greater than 0, then it's all solutions. We'll see something else here in this next one where it'll get into when it's not true. So, spoiler alert. Let's go to this next one. I'm going to distribute my 3. I end up with 24b minus 3. And again, I'm going to keep this other side the same because I have not done anything to it yet. 24b is less than, or excuse me, minus 4. Okay, so now I have those things the same. Again, I have to try to get my constants together and my variables together because I have them on both sides. I'm going to add 4 and add 4. I'm going to end up with 24b plus 1 is less than or equal to 24b because these cancel each other out. Now I'm in that same position where I have a 24b on each side. So to move it over, I have to subtract 24b and subtract 24b. When I do that, then I'm left with 1 is less than or equal to, again, this created a 0. Now, my question for you again is this true? This is not true. 1 is never less than 0, so this is not true, which then that means there is no solution. So these are kind of those weird ones. If you remember this from solving equations, we had ones like this too. So this is your true answer right here, no solution, because this statement is not true.